Living a new life. Musings of the day. What does it take to fully bloom? The natural world is ripe with lessons. Though I often miss the messages in the midst of my everyday life, I've made it a point this year to pay closer attention. In Arizona, we have unusual foliage. It can be sharp and thorny or wispy and feather-like. I love it all. I feel an affinity with the plants here, like we're of the same family. This year, I'm engaged in some deep spiritual work, life-altering, you might say. I'm finding my way back home to a path that has called to me for many years. This spring is the beginning of my own reawakening. My path is one of the earth and the natural world. It is an ancient path, one I know in my bones. I'm paying attention to the smallest details, knowing that there are signs and messages waiting for me everywhere. Watching the plants in my backyard begin to bloom this month, I'm struck by the similarities between their cycles and my own. Cacti and succulents have some of the most exotic and sensual blooms I've ever seen, but they only come once and then die off just as they are at their peak. I don't know if this is a scientific fact, but I've noticed that some of them need to be firmly established in their ground before producing a bloom. I've had many in my gardens for years before ever seeing a bud. So I ask myself, what will it take for me to fully bloom? I've lived a long time as of this writing, and I've never felt like I was firmly planted anywhere. I'm not referring to the place I live, but more the ground on which I base my life, my spirit and my creative work. I've danced around it for years. I've kept myself in some sort of spiritual and creative limbo, afraid to step onto my own sacred ground. A couple of days ago, I awoke to the buds on one of my cacti. It's a plant that has been in the ground for a number of years, and only in the last couple has it begun to bloom. Upon reflection, I see that it needed time to establish itself before it could produce a flower. Like the succulents you see here, these plants have kept me waiting for years while they pulled nourishment from the soil. The birds and insects that share their home with these plants have contributed their own magic to the process. They've weathered storms, heat spells, and drought, each challenge adding to the beauty they're able to produce. Though each bloom lasts only a day before withering, the spectacle is not to be missed when it comes. One bloom, one day, years in the making. Perhaps my own bloom will be just as sensual and magnificent. The storms I've weathered, the droughts, also that I can plant myself firmly in the earth that feels like my true home, and so that I can gift the world with my own unique blooming. I see symbols and messages all around me, like this baby owl showing up at my back door. They guide me and enliven my life. They are my treasures. I surround myself with these symbols to remind me of my path. They help guide me back home when I forget. They enrich my home and my life. After a long lifetime of enriching the soil all around me, filling it with the treasures and wisdom I've accumulated along the way, I find myself in a mix of very dense and loamy mulch. It holds the experience of many years, along with the spoils of each battle I have fought to survive. Like the plants in my beloved desert garden, my roots have finally taken hold. I feel the fullness welling up within me, waiting for the time when my first true bloom will burst forth. And as my cacti have shown me, there could not have been any hurrying of this process, because each individual nutrient rained down upon my soil was necessary to produce the most opulent blooms. Each cycle of the seasons and every flood, storm, and heat wave contributing exactly the elements that would enrich the earth beneath my feet. I'm now like one of my old twisted trees, a few broken branches and scarred limbs, a little oddly shaped in places, but ripe enough now to shower blossoms of extraordinary colors. It took whatever it took. Time is irrelevant. What does it take to fully bloom? For me, 70 years of composting each and every bit of my life into a rich soil that will yield my own uniquely extraordinary fruit. And for you, that's something only you can say. I invite you to ponder that one, because your answers can open the door to the most beautiful blooms imaginable in your lifetime.